season of Plunder is finally here, which means the Arc 3.0 subclass update is also here, so it's time to dominate the universe with that lightning. So today we're opening up the Season 18 class builds playlist, and first up I introduce you to our new Arc 3.0 Hunter build. Now if you think this situation here is painful, let me tell you, it really was painful. So just throw a blinding grenade and let's be done with this really irritating barrier champion already. Now this new Arc build is being used in a Master Lost sector whilst almost 30 under the recommended power level, and the only thing harder than this is a Grandmaster Nightfall. So this build really can handle anything the game throws at you. Of course, with you being massively underpowered in endgame PvE, your abilities will struggle to maintain a reasonable damage output, but that won't stop us becoming a complete god. So with this build you will have the option to go all out DPS and completely melt everything instantly, or go the safe route with healing and invisibility, and I will go through that setup in a short moment. So guys, if you find this one useful, be sure to leave a rating, comment, subscribe and share for more, and now let's jolt some enemies. Wait, is it just me or does that sound a bit wrong? Just roll the intro. Now before we jump into the build, like every build video, I will mention that the full playlist of new and updated builds is linked down below, which currently has just this build in there as of today, but give it a few weeks, check it out, and you might just find your new best build. So now getting into the build video, this is your new OP Hunter build, redesigned from the original Arc subclass last season, with quite a few changes to how the build works, which by the way, works really well even in endgame PvE. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can get completely destroyed, but if you master this build with the right setup, you can counter pretty much anything that the game throws at you, exactly like this annoying barrier champion that just wouldn't stop hiding behind shielded enemies and walls where you just can't get a shot on them because being hit a few times will just get you killed. So you will be able to bypass those sort of things, whether that's blinding the enemies and wiping them out, or sneaking past them with invisibility, or even just running in like a god and completely melting them down instantly. This build will achieve that for how you want it, but just remember that you're not invincible like the Solar 3.0 restoration builds, so you can still die pretty quickly yourself, especially if you're not buffed out when you do go in for the kill. Now in this build I will also point out that we are going to use the new Arc Super that came along with the Hunter, and guys, this thing is amazing. I don't know if it's just me, but I am just loving the Arc Hunters right now, which is why this is the first build video, because they have really good ad clearing with pretty good damage too. Now how you'll basically use this build with the setup I believe is the best choice to go with is you'll first run in and kill an ad with your melee. This will spawn an Arc Elemental Well which will buff your next melee attack while making you invisible and increasing the damage of your next melee, stacking up to 3 times. And then you'll dodge near an enemy to get the melee back and repeat, and looping this over and over will spawn Arc Wells non-stop. It'll also buff your melee damage by a lot, you'll permanently be invisible, and when you get weapon kills you'll also spawn Void Wells which will give you damage resistance on top. You're also going to get your super pretty fast as well in roughly 1 to 2 minutes, which honestly guys is just insane. And you know the best part about this build isn't that you can deal a stupid amount of damage to ads with your melee or get the health back on each kill, it's the fact that you're actually chaining arc damage to nearby ads on every hit, jolting enemies, blinding them and becoming amplified, which makes you run so fast, and it's not even funny. You can just run in and melt ads, not one by one, but group by group, and you guys 100% need to try this build out. The only downside I'd say to this build is that you ideally want to use it when playing solo, because otherwise your team might just ruin it and you won't get all the buffs that you need in order to kill the tougher ads. But this is an amazing build to use in solo, legend and master activities this season. So getting into the setup of this build, the very first thing you'll want is a good arc weapon. Ideally go for something that uses special ammo like the new delicate fusion rifle that we got this season, as it will benefit the build massively, but in some cases like the Lost Sector I did, you might benefit more using other weapons like how I was using this solar weapon because we had the solar burn on that Lost Sector. But for places where you don't have active modifiers that benefit certain weapons, you are better off running arc special weapons. For the subclass we're using a new Arcstrider Gathering Storm Arc 3.0 subclass, which is really fun and effective to use. Then we'll use a Gambler's Dodge so that we can get our melee back instantly when dodging at enemies. With this we'll use the Combination Blow melee, which will restore our dodge when getting a kill with it, so you're basically chaining between those two abilities. And the grenade we have is the Flashbang one to blind enemies. Now you can use what you want really, but I know there will be mixed thoughts on this one, but personally I think having the blinding grenades can be really beneficial to certain situations. But if you have a good GL with blinding nades, then you don't need to use this. But moving on to the aspects, we have Lethal Current. After dodging, your next melee attack has increased range, jolts the target and creates a damaging aftershock, and then damaging a jolted target with the melee will blind them. Pretty useful on champions that are surrounded by multiple ads. But the second aspect we have is Flow State, where defeating a jolted target makes you amplified. Now amplified will basically give you a faster movement speed, which is good for a melee build, and jolted will chain lightning to nearby enemies, which is why the melee is so much better this season, because you don't kill single targets, you kill groups. Anyway, for the fragments, we're using the Spark of Beacons, while amplified Arc Special Weapon Final Blows create a blinding explosion. Spark of Resilience, while surrounded by enemies, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Spark of Shock, Arc Grenades can jolt targets, and then Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace, and that Ionic Trace will give us ability energy, which will be useful for our grenade. So quite a lot to take in with the new Arc subclass, but TLDR, run around and punch ads in the face and you'll clear everything around you. Now for the exotic, you have a few choices. You can go with the Assassin's Cowl for invis and healing, or you can go with Liar's Handshake to max out your DPS, which when played right, you can pretty much insta-kill champions while clearing everything around you at the same time. But the problem with this is you can die pretty quickly, and it can be hard to get buffed up to that point in endgame PvE, especially while underpowered. So my advice, use Liar's Handshake if you're playing endgame PvE at the recommended power level, and use Assassin's Cowl if playing endgame PvE below the recommended power level, as you will have more survivability. Just remember to go with a 1-2 punch shotty if you really do want to get that melee DPS as high as possible. So for this build, I'm going to set up with the Assassin's Cowl. So powered melee kills will grant invis and restore health and shields, and this is basically going to happen all the time as we have infinite melee abilities and dodges anyway. For the mods, we have Powerful Friends, not required, but I'm using this for the extra mobility. Then I have Reap and Wellmaker to spawn in Void Wells, which we'll use for Well of Tenacity to reduce the damage we take from enemies for a short time. Again, we're dodging all the time, so this build, spawning the wells aren't going to be an issue. We're also going to use mainly Wellmaker to spawn in Arc Wells, which we will be doing every other kill, and then we'll use those Arc Wells on Well of Irons, so that we have increased melee damage. As for the normal mod, starting with a helmet, we have Hands On for bonus super energy on melee kills, but we also need this anyway for our Powerful Friends secondary perk to work for the plus 20 mobility stat. Then in the arms, we have our champion mods that we need. In the chest, we're using the Thermoshock Plating damage resist mod. In the legs, we have our Scavenger mod for our heavy weapon that you might want to slot on. And then lastly, in the class, we have Surge Detonators for overload grenades, which always come in handy. And then Bad Amplitude, where damaging a champion with an arc ability causes the champion to become jolted, which you can then go punch them to blind them if you want to. For the stats though, I'd max out resilience to 100 for the 40% damage reduction, then I'd go for mobility and then intellect, but those are my personal preferences. But you do want that resilience maxed out though for definite, or you will have a hard time punching ads in the face in endgame PvE. Now the last thing I want to go over is the artifact. I haven't yet unlocked the last row, but when I do, I'm most likely going to replace the class mods with the new Thunderous Retort, so that the Arc Super can do more damage. Again, I haven't tested this yet, as I've not unlocked it, but it sounds like it could be pretty lethal. Now in terms of the exotics you could use with this build, I'd go with Trinity Ghoul and the Overload Bows, a Delicate Fusion, or even a Thunderlord, but do let me know what you guys end up using below, because I'd love to know what weapons you think would pair well this season with Arc 3.0. So overall, this is probably one of the best hunter builds out right now for the Arc subclass this season, especially for ad clearing with powerful punches, but I'd still use this in Legend and Master Lost Sectors solo, or any activity solo for that matter, because using this while playing with a team could be a real pain with people stealing your kills, and then you not getting the health back or going invis, and then end up dying. So yeah, have a play around with the build and let me know what you think of it down below. There is a dim link in the description. But guys, that is all for this new Hunter Arc build for the Arc 3.0 subclass update in Destiny 2 Witch Queen Season of Plunder, or Season 18. Next, as always, be sure to check out the playlist for more builds like this, as I will be covering new and updated builds here on the channel every week. But for now, whatever you get up to, have a good one, and I'll see you all in that next build video. Peace out.